Let's talk about the U.S. rule which applies to making partial payments on short-term loans. The book says that the U.S. rule allows the borrower to receive proper interest credits. This rule states that any partial loan payment first covers any interest that has built up. Then the remainder of the partial payment reduces the loan principal. This rule was instituted to help the consumer because when you make a payment, the lender is supposed to pay off all your interest to that point, and then whatever's left over in the payment reduces your principal. That way you're not paying interest on the interest every month. You're paying off the interest plus some principal. So let's see how this works. We have a situation where Joe Mill owes $5,000 on an 11% 90-day note. $5,000 on an 11% 90-day note. Now let's label these things. What would be the $5,000? That's the principal, and the 11% rate, and the 90 days? Time. Very good. Now, here's what happens. Joe walks in. He doesn't wait till 90 days and walk in and pay off the whole thing. He comes in on day 50 and he makes a partial payment of $600. $600. On day 80, he makes an additional payment of $800. Now, what are the questions? Assume a 360-day year, which we should always assume. What is Joe's adjusted balance after day 50 and after day 80? In other words, after he makes this payment, how much does he owe on day 50? After he makes this payment, how much does he owe on day 80? And the third question is, what is the ending balance due? When he walks in on day 90, how much does he owe to pay off the loan? So let's look at how we do this. And it's really not as complicated as you might think. It's longer and it's messier, but basically we treat this as three separate simple loans. It's really all one loan, but the math works just as if it were three separate loans. So let's look at the first loan. Interest is principal times rate times time. Now, Joe walks in on day 50 and Joe says, here's $600. Now, Joe is not as mathematically astute as all of you are. He's not taking business math. And he says to the banker, I owed $5,000. Here's my $600 payment. Now I owe $4,400, right? And the bank says, no, Joe, you see, you've had some of our money, and you've had it for a certain length of time, and we charge interest when people have our money for a certain length of time. So, yes, you're right, except you also owe us interest. Now, how much money has Joe been borrowing since he walked out on the first day of the loan? $5,000. And what rate has he been paying? 11%. And when he walks in to make this partial payment, how long has he had that money? 50 days. Okay? So he owes 50 days. What do we divide by? 360. So this is how much interest he owes when he walks in on day 50. So let's figure out what that is. Punch in 5,000 times 11% times 50 divided by 360 equals to the nearest penny. What do we get? Everybody get 76.39 to the nearest penny? 39? Okay. So the banker would say, Joe, yes, you owe us $4,400, but you also owe us interest of $76.39. So when you walk out the door today, you're going to owe us $44.76.39. Now, the book does not do it this way, and an accountant would not do it this way. An accountant would say, I'm going to subtract this interest from your payment, and then whatever's left I'm going to subtract from this. But it gives you the same answer. And the reason I like to teach students this way at this point is because you're always going to subtract the payment and you're always going to add the interest. If you do it the other way, you've got to remember to change at the end. But this way, you do it the same way every step. Okay? So always subtract the payment and add the interest. How's everybody on that? If we had a 50-day loan, this would be the maturity value at the end of 50 days, wouldn't it? It'd be the principal plus this interest, and he paid off 600 of it, so he still owes that much. Okay? In other words, you could think of it as 5,000 plus this much interest minus 600. Doesn't matter what order you do it in, you're going to get the same answer. Okay, so Joe comes back on day 80 and he says, okay, I think I understand. You had to charge me interest, so I owed this much when I left last time, right? They say, yep. He says, okay, here's $800 more. Now I owe you this much. Is that right? No, that's not right. Because you see, Joe, you've had some of our money and you've had it for a certain length of time and we charge interest. How much of the bank's money has Joe had in this segment of time? He's had this $4,400 amount, hasn't he? Because that's what he owed when he walked out the door last time. So that's how much he's been borrowing, $44.7639. Has the interest rate changed? No, it's still the same loan. We're just doing the math as if it were separate loans. Now, he walked out on day 50. He walks in on day 80. How many days has he had the money? 80 minus 50? He's had it 30 days, hasn't he? All right, he's had it 30 days. So let's see how much interest he owes for this 30-day period. $41.03. Does that sound right to the nearest penny? Sounds right to me. So Joe really owes more than this, doesn't he? He owes that much plus the interest for the last 30 days. So let's add that interest, $41.03. And that's how much he owes when he walks out the door on day 80, $37.17.42. So this is the answer to question 1. What was his adjusted balance on day 50? It was $44.7639. What was his adjusted balance on day 80? It was $37.17.42. After he made those payments, those were his balances respectively on day 50 and 80. Now, when does Joe have to make his next payment? Yeah, in other words, Joe has to come in when the loan's due on day 90. And he can't just say, here's 600 or here's 800. The loan's due. He's got to pay the whole thing off. Well, how much has he been borrowing since his last payment? He's been borrowing that $3,700 amount, hasn't he? $37.17.42. Has the interest rate changed? No, still the same loan. And how long has he had this money? He's had it 10 days, hasn't he? And we have to divide that by 360. And now this is how much interest he owes for the last 10 days of the loan based on that amount of principal that he was borrowing for that 10 days. And what do we get? 1136. Does that sound right? How many of you got that? 1136. Let's see what the survey says. Survey says 1136. So that's the interest for the last 10 days. So Joe can't say, I'm going to pay 600 or 800. He has to pay all the money that he's been borrowing plus interest for the last 10 days to pay off that loan in full. So the ending balance due is $3,717.42 plus the interest for the last 10 days. So So he has to make a payment of $3728.78. That's the answer to the third question of what's his ending balance. Questions or comments, Dave?
Yeah, it don't make sense to me because, like I said, you're breaking it down to 50 days, 30 days, 10 days, where the truth is he's had the money, $4,476 for 80 days, and he should be paying interest on 80 days.
No, because he
a new loan.
no, because he paid off some of it.
$800, right?
Right. So that reduced how much he owed.
Right.
Maybe I'm not understanding the question.
Well, his